CEO panics without a French translator until the janitor's 7-year-old daughter takes control and saves his million-dollar meeting from disaster. And what he discovers shocks everyone at the meeting. Before we jump into the tale, leave a comment below and share where you're tuning in from. Hope you enjoy the story. Michael Harrison's fingers shook as he glared at his phone. The text message seemed to sear into his eyes. Mr. Harrison, I'm so sorry. Struck with food poisoning. Can't make it to translate today. In the ER. Thomas. No, 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 Michael yelled, his voice bouncing off the walls of the empty boardroom on the 42nd floor of Harrison Industries. Outside the massive windows, New York City hummed with energy, oblivious to the fact that his empire was on the verge of collapse. In exactly 2 hours, Jacques Dubois and Pierre Laurent, France's most influential venture capitalists, would step through those glass doors. They managed a fund worth $800 million and spoke only French. No English. No compromises. It was their way of ensuring only the most dedicated and respectful partners earned their trust. Michael had spent 18 months securing this meeting. 18 months of global calls, meticulously written proposals, and restless nights perfecting his pitch. His groundbreaking AI software could revolutionize healthcare across Europe. But without their investment, it would stay just another brilliant idea collecting dust. His assistant, Rachel Martinez, rushed in, her usual calm demeanor shattered with worry. Sir, I've contacted every translation service in the city. They're all booked, sick, or unavailable on such short notice. Michael tugged at his tie, feeling it strangle him. At 55, he had built his company from scratch. A tiny tech startup in his garage to a $200 million enterprise. But this moment could either propel him into the billionaire league or see everything fall apart. There has to be someone, Rachel. Anyone. Try the universities, the embassy, anywhere. I did, sir. Colombia's French department is shut for faculty meetings. The French consulate pointed us to the same unavailable services. Rachel said, her voice breaking. Sir, what if we reschedule? Michael's blood froze. Dubois made it clear, today or nothing. They leave for Paris tonight. He pressed, his hands against the polished mahogany conference table, where 20 careers rested on his choices, where families relied on his success. The elevator dinged faintly in the distance, a sound that usually meant little, but today felt like a warning. Soon, those doors would open to either his triumph or his ruin. But Michael had no clue that salvation was about to appear in the most surprising form. Small, innocent, and lugging a mop bucket almost too large for her tiny hands. A soft hum floated through the hallway, like a tune from another realm. Michael stopped his frantic pacing, straining to hear over the pounding of his own heart. Someone was singing in French. Frère Jacques, dormez-vous, dormez-vous. The voice was young, clear, and flawlessly fluent. Michael's heart nearly skipped a beat. He hurried toward the sound. Rachel right behind. Their polished leather shoes clicking rapidly against the cold marble floors that had seen countless corporate wins and losses. Around the corner, they found her. A little girl, no older than 7, sitting cross-legged next to a janitor's cart that loomed over her like a mechanical beast. Her dark curls were tied back in a simple ponytail with a worn pink elastic. Her outfit, a faded blue dress, washed many times, and scuffed white sneakers with mismatched laces, hinted at modest circumstances, but careful upkeep. She was arranging, cleaning supplies with the careful precision of someone far older, all while singing in flawless French that would have stunned scholars at the Sorbonne. "Excuse me," Michael said softly, kneeling to her level on the hard marble floor. His tone was gentle, cautious, as if he might scare away this unexpected miracle that had appeared in his darkest moment. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" The girl looked up with wide, sharp brown eyes that seemed far too knowing for someone who should still believe in fairy tales and Santa Claus. There was something almost magical in her gaze. as if she could peer right through people's hearts, finding the kindness buried beneath layers of corporate toughness and grown-up doubts. "I'm Sophie Rodriguez," she said with a timid smile that brightened her whole face. "My dad works here fixing stuff. He's down in the basement right now working on the electrical system. So I'm helping sort his supplies until he's done with the tricky tasks." Michael's mind spun faster than a Wall Street trading floor during a market crash. Could this be real? Could hope really come in such a small, unexpected form? "Sophie, that lovely song you were singing, do you speak French?" Sophie's face glowed with pride that shone from every inch of her. "Oui, monsieur. My mom taught me before she went to heaven 2 years ago. She was from Quebec and always said French was the language of her soul, where her heart felt most alive. We used to read stories together every night in French. Fairy tales, adventure books, even business newspapers as I got older." Her smile dimmed slightly at the tender memory, but then sparkled again with stubborn strength. "Dad says I should practice every day so Mom would be proud of me from heaven." Rachel let out a soft gasp, pressing her neatly manicured hand to her chest in astonishment. Michael felt a wave of hope so strong it nearly knocked him back onto the marble floor. "Sophie," he said cautiously, barely daring to trust what he was hearing, "how well do you really speak French? Could you talk with important adults from France?" "Oh, yes!" Sophie nodded eagerly, her ponytail bouncing with excitement. "I watch French cartoons online every morning before school, and I practice talking with Mrs. Chen from apartment 4B in our building. She lived in Paris for 20 years at a fancy hotel, and she says my accent is magnifique." She said the last word with perfect French flair that would have made native speakers envious. Michael shared a meaningful glance with Rachel, both realizing they might be witnessing something truly extraordinary. This was unbelievable. This was beyond imagination. This was... "Sir," Rachel whispered urgently, glancing at her diamond-studded watch with rising panic. "They'll be here in exactly 90 minutes. Sophie tilted her head, studying Michael's worried face with the sharp understanding kids often have. "Are you in trouble, mister? Dad always says when people look as worried as you do, they really need someone to help fix their problems." Michael's throat tightened with overwhelming emotion. Here was this precious child, pure as fresh snow, offering to help a stranger without expecting anything in return. "Sophie, honey, we have some very important guests coming from France soon. They only speak French, no English at all, and our translator got sick at the last moment. Could you help us talk to them?" Sophie's eyes widened with excitement that could have lit up the whole building. "Really? You want me to help with something super important?" She jumped to her feet, barely reaching Michael's waist even on her tiptoes. "I promise I'll do my very best. Mom always said helping others is the most important thing in the world. And kindness is the greatest gift anyone can share. Sophie, we need to get you ready for something big," Michael said, his voice shaking with a mix of desperate hope and gripping fear. The weight of 200 employees' futures pressed on his shoulders like a mountain of responsibility. Sophie squared her small shoulders with a determination that would have made army generals proud. "Don't worry, Mr. Harrison. Mom used to say that when people seem scary on the outside, it's usually because they've forgotten how to feel happy inside. Maybe I can help them remember what joy feels like." Rachel hurried to her mahogany desk and returned with a thick stack of papers filled with complex legal and financial terms. "Sophie, these are some tough words they might use. Business terms in French. Can you read these and understand them?" Sophie took the papers in her small hands, treating them like ancient scrolls. Her lips moved silently as she read, her brow creased in focus. Michael watched in awe as her face slowly lit up with understanding, like dawn breaking over mountain peaks. "Oh, these are pretty simple," she said with genuine surprise. "Investissement means investment. Bénéfices means profits. Contrat means contract. And stratégie commerciale means business strategy." Mom and I used to play learning games with her business magazines from the bank where she worked. She said learning was like hunting for treasure. Every new word was a precious gem to collect. Michael's eyebrows shot up in shock. Your mother worked at a bank? Yes, she was really smart about money and business stuff. She worked at the Royal Bank of Montreal for 8 years before she met Dad and moved to New York. Sophie said, her voice brimming with pride that shone through every word. She used to tell me exciting stories about helping young families buy their first homes and dreamers start their own businesses from nothing. She said understanding money was key to surviving, but understanding people's dreams and hopes was far more important for truly living. Rachel knelt beside Sophie, gently smoothing her faded dress and retying her ponytail with a motherly touch. Honey, these are very powerful men who control huge amounts of money. They might ask you really hard questions. They might test your French to see if you're as good as you seem. Sophie nodded with a serious understanding far beyond her years. That's okay. When I was nervous about starting first grade last year, Mom taught me something special. She said when people test you, they're not being mean. They're checking if you're strong and capable enough for something really important. And I know I'm strong because Mom taught me to be brave. Michael's chest tightened with emotion that threatened to crack his professional calm. This remarkable little girl had a wisdom most adults never reached in their entire lives. But the crushing weight of responsibility was eating him alive. If Sophie made even one small mistake, if the investors thought she was just a charming distraction, his life's work would crumble. 200 loyal employees would lose their jobs before Christmas. Years of groundbreaking research would go to waste. Dreams would die painful deaths. Sophie, he said softly, kneeling to meet her eyes. I need to tell you something serious. If this meeting doesn't go perfectly, many good people might lose their jobs right before the holidays. That wouldn't be your fault. It would be mine for not being ready. But I want you to know how important this meeting is. Sophie looked at him with those impossibly wise brown eyes that seemed to hold centuries of understanding. Mr. Harrison, are you scared right now? The question hit him like a punch to the gut. In 40 years of tough business deals, no one had ever asked him that so directly. Yes, sweetheart. I'm really scared. Sophie reached up and took his large, rough hand in her tiny, soft one. It's okay to feel scared sometimes. Mom was really scared when the doctors told her she was sick. But she told me that being afraid just means something matters to you a lot. That's not bad. It's love showing itself. The elevator dinged with the finality of a bell signaling Judgment Day. Michael straightened his silk tie one last time, his hands shaking slightly as Sophie stood beside him in the vast boardroom, looking tiny against the floor-to-ceiling windows showing Manhattan's glittering skyline. She had insisted on wearing her best dress, a simple yellow sundress with tiny white flowers that her father had carefully ironed that morning, paired with polished black church shoes that clicked softly on the marble floor. Her dark hair was, now, neatly braided with a small yellow ribbon that matched her dress perfectly. Remember, Sophie, Michael whispered, his voice tight with nervous energy that could have powered a city. Just translate exactly what they say to me and what I say to them. Can you do that? Sophie nodded seriously, her small hands clasped calmly in front of her like a diplomat ready for peace talks. Don't worry, Mr. Harrison. I won't let you down. Mom always said when someone trusts you with something important, you guard that trust like it's made of the most precious diamonds in the world. The elevator doors slid open with a gentle mechanical hum, and Michael's world tilted forever. Jacques Dubois stepped out first, a tall, elegantly dressed man in his early 60s, with silver hair and the commanding presence of a European monarch. His navy Armani suit likely cost more than most families spent on groceries in half a year, and his steel-gray eyes carried the sharp calculation of someone who could dismantle entire companies with a single flick of his well-groomed hand. Behind him, Pierre Laurent glided with the smooth, dangerous grace of a shark sensing prey in murky waters. Younger than Jacques by perhaps 10 years, his reputation in global business circles was even more formidable. Financial journals dubbed him The executioner, for his uncanny ability to tear apart weak business pitches with razor-sharp precision, leaving entrepreneurs shattered on conference room floors. Their piercing gazes landed on Sophie, and Michael watched in dread as their expressions shifted from slight confusion to what seemed like barely concealed anger and professional offense. "Monsieur Harrison," Jacques said in heavily accented English, his voice cold enough to freeze, the Hudson River solid. "Qu'est-ce que c'est exactement? What is this child doing in our business meeting? We came to discuss 800 million in serious investment, not to play foolish games with children." Michael felt his carefully built empire starting to crack before a single word had been properly translated. His mouth opened to stammer desperate explanations. But then, something extraordinary happened. Sophie stepped forward with a quiet dignity that would have made royalty pause in admiration. Her chin lifted with the confidence of someone addressing the United Nations. "Bonjour, Monsieur Dubois. Bonjour, Monsieur Laurent," she said in perfect French, her voice as clear as crystal, bells ringing over a serene countryside. "Je m'appelle Sophie Rodriguez, et je serai votre interprète professionnel aujourd'hui. J'espère sincèrement que votre voyage était agréable et que votre hôtel est confortable. C'est un honneur de faire votre connaissance." De Das Santos nurse. Room transformed instantly, like magic. Both powerful men's eyebrows shot up in utter shock, their mouths dropping slightly in stunned amazement. Sophie had greeted them in flawless Parisian French, with impeccable grammar and pronunciation, introducing herself as their professional interpreter, asking about their flight and hotel, and expressing honor at meeting them, all with the polished grace of a seasoned diplomat. Pierre leaned toward Jacques and whispered quickly in French, unaware that Sophie understood every word. "Mon Dieu! As-tu entendu cet accent? C'est absolument parfait, meilleur que la plupart des traducteurs professionnels avec qui nous avons travaillé en 20 ans. Où cet enfant extraordinaire a-t-elle appris à parler ainsi?" Sophie turned to Michael with a gentle, reassuring smile that could have melted glaciers. "Mr. Harrison, Monsieur Laurent is amazed at my French accent and asked where I learned to speak so well. He seems very pleased with my language skills. Monsieur, please make yourselves comfortable," Michael said, gesturing toward the barred, polished mahogany conference table that had seen both glorious victories and crushing defeats over decades of high-stakes negotiations. As the distinguished guests settled into luxurious leather chairs that cost more than most people's monthly paychecks, Sophie climbed gracefully onto a seat that dwarfed her tiny frame. Her small legs dangled freely in the air. She looked like a precious child playing dress-up in a world of power and wealth. Yet her natural composure carried a regal quality that commanded instant respect despite her small size. "Monsieur Harrison," Jacques began in rapid, sophisticated French, his tone now warmer and more respectful. "We must honestly admit that in all our careers, we have never conducted serious business with such a remarkably young interpreter. Please tell us, how did you find this extraordinary child?" Sophie translated with smooth, professional confidence that would have impressed UN interpreters. Michael felt a surge of protective pride as he responded carefully. "Sophie is the cherished daughter of one of our most trusted employees. When our translator fell ill at the last moment, she bravely offered to help. I've learned over the years that true talent and wisdom often come from the most unexpected places, and great insight often flows from the purest hearts." As Sophie relayed his words in elegant French, Michael saw both formidable men nod with clear approval. He could almost see their stern business facades softening, a change he had never witnessed in years of dealing with tough European investors. Michael activated the massive presentation screen, showcasing technology born from years of relentless research. "Gentlemen, let me show you why our revolutionary AI healthcare platform will transform medical care across Europe and potentially save thousands of lives." For the next intense hour, something truly magical unfolded in that boardroom. Sophie didn't just translate words. She transformed the entire mood of the meeting. When Michael explained complex technical ideas about machine learning and data processing, she made them clear and approachable in French. When Jacques asked detailed questions about data privacy and GDPR compliance, Sophie's translations were so precise and nuanced that Michael found himself explaining concepts better than ever before. But her impact went beyond language and accuracy. Sophie's innocent presence warmed the room like sunlight melting winter frost. Her genuine excitement for the life-saving technology. Her pure joy when Michael described how the software could help doctors diagnose deadly diseases faster. Her delight at being part of something so important. It filled the sterile conference room with a warmth and humanity no professional translator could have brought. This revolutionary algorithm, Michael said with growing passion, pointing to intricate charts on the massive screen, can analyze medical imaging 40 times faster than traditional methods, catching cancers and other diseases in their earliest, most treatable stages, giving patients the best chance for full recovery. Sophie translated faithfully, then added something spontaneous that made both investors lean forward with keen interest and visible emotion. Monsieur, Mr. Harrison's amazing computer can help doctors find sickness before it grows too big to fight. Like, if doctors had found my mom's illness sooner, maybe she'd still be here with me, teaching me new French words and reading bedtime stories. The room fell silent, save for the soft ticking of an antique clock. Michael's chest tightened as he realized Sophie had just delivered the most powerful argument of his entire presentation. Golden afternoon sunlight streamed through the towering windows, casting dramatic shadows across the polished table as the meeting reached its critical phase. Michael had presented every detail of his AI platform, answered countless technical questions with expertise honed over years, and watched Sophie handle every linguistic challenge with the grace of a seasoned diplomat. But now came the moment he dreaded most, the brutal financial negotiations that would decide whether his dreams would thrive or die in this very room. Monsieur Harrison, Jacques said, his tone growing serious and businesslike, your innovative technology is truly impressive, and your presentation has been unexpectedly remarkable. However, we must now discuss the hard realities of investment terms and funding. Sophie translated with perfect accuracy, and Michael's stomach twisted with anxiety. This was where promising deals often collapsed in the cold, ruthless math of risk and returns, where emotions had no place, and dreams were reduced to percentages and profits. We typically invest no more than $50 million in first-round funding for platforms like yours. Pierre continued in rapid French, his intimidating business mask firmly back in place, and we require 40% equity ownership in return, along with significant control over all European operations. Michael's heart sank like a stone in deep water. $50 million wouldn't be enough to launch his platform across Europe, and giving up 40% of his company would mean losing control of his life's work. The technological dream he'd nurtured from a garage startup into a medical marvel. Before he could form a response, Sophie raised her small hand with the quiet confidence of someone addressing world leaders. Excusez-moi, messieurs, she said with polite respect to the French investors. May I ask you both a very personal question, please? Sophie's voice was polite but bold, catching both powerful men off guard. They exchanged surprised looks but nodded with curiosity, clearly intrigued by this young girl's unexpected courage. When you were little boys, just like I'm a little girl now. Sophie continued in French, her voice carrying a wisdom far beyond her years. Did you ever have a dream so big it scared you? But deep in your heart, you knew if you could make it real, it would help so many people who were hurting. Jacques and Pierre shared a meaningful glance, clearly unprepared for such a deep question from their 7-year-old interpreter. I did have such a dream, Jacques admitted slowly, his voice softening with old memories. I wanted to build schools in my poor village. Everyone said I was too young, too poor, too foolish to dream so big. And did you make that dream come true? Sophie asked, her eyes shining with genuine care. Eventually, yes. But it took many hard years and special people who believed in impossible dreams when no one else would, Jacques replied. Sophie turned to Pierre with the same sincere attention. And you, Monsieur Laurent? What was your big, scary dream? Pierre's stern face melted like ice under warm sunlight. I wanted to build a modern hospital in my struggling hometown. The doctors there had no advanced tools, and people died. Who could have been saved with better technology? Did you make your wonderful dream come true too? Yes, little angel. Pierre said softly. It's been running successfully for 15 years and has saved thousands of lives. Sophie nodded thoughtfully, taking in their words with the seriousness of a judge weighing vital evidence. Then she looked at Michael with such trust and admiration that his chest tightened with emotion. Mr. Harrison's dream is just like yours were, she said, switching back to French with fierce conviction. He wants to help doctors save people like my dear mama. But dreams that big need true friends who understand their meaning, not just business partners who only think about money. She turned to the investors with the pure moral authority only a child's innocence can hold. My mama used to say that when you find someone with a truly good heart and a dream that could help the world, you don't just give them a little help. You give them enough to make the dream fully real. Because some dreams are too important for people to let them fail. The boardroom fell silent, broken only by the soft ticking of Michael's antique grandfather clock and the faint hum of Manhattan traffic 42 floors below. Jacques and Pierre sat still, staring at Sophie with expressions that shifted from skeptical calculation to something like awe. Finally, Jacques cleared his throat, his voice heavy with unexpected emotion. Mademoiselle Sophie, in 30 years of global business, no one has ever reminded us why we first started investing in people's dreams instead of just chasing profits. Pierre nodded slowly, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. We began our careers to change the world and help brilliant dreamers bring their visions to life, not just to pile up wealth. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that noble goal. Sophie translated faithfully, though Michael could see she didn't fully grasp the weight of what was happening. Monsieur Harrison, Jacques continued in French, standing with a dignified air. After careful thought and this child's remarkable wisdom, we have made our decision. We will invest $200 million in your groundbreaking company. Michael's legs nearly buckled. $200 million. 4 times what he'd dared hope for in his wildest dreams. But Jacques wasn't done. However, we will take only 20% equity, not the 40% we usually demand. This precious girl has reminded us that some dreams are too important to own. They must be shared with the world. Sophie's eyes widened like saucers as she translated the incredible news. Mr. Harrison, they want to give you $200 million. That's enough to help doctors everywhere. But then Jacques raised his hand, and Michael's soaring heart froze. There was always a catch with deals this big. However, we have one non-negotiable condition for this investment, Jacques said. Michael held his breath, bracing for the blow that would shatter his joy. We want Mademoiselle Sophie to be our official youth ambassador for this project. When we launch across Europe, we want her to speak publicly about why this technology matters so much. The world needs to hear from someone who truly understands that behind every innovation are real people, real families, and real hearts broken by loss. Sophie's mouth dropped open in surprise. Mr. Harrison, they want me to be an ambassador? That sounds so important and exciting. Michael knelt beside Sophie's oversized chair, his voice thick with emotion. Sophie, sweetheart, do you understand what just happened? These generous men want to give us enough money to help doctors worldwide save lives. And it's all because of you. Your pure heart, your kindness, and your incredible gift for bringing out the best in people. Sophie's face glowed with pride, but then turned thoughtful. Mr. Harrison, what does an ambassador do? An ambassador, Michael explained gently, travels to different places and talks about important things. You'd help us tell doctors and families how our technology can stop other children from losing their parents, like you lost your mama. Sophie's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy and purpose. You mean I could help make sure other little girls don't have to say goodbye to their mamas? Yes, sweetheart. That's exactly what it means. Pierre leaned forward, speaking to Sophie in gentle French. But there's something else important, little princess. Part of our investment will create a full educational scholarship fund just for you, covering everything from elementary school to university, even prestigious schools in France if you want. As Sophie translated this life-changing news, her small voice trembled. Mr. Harrison, they want to pay for all my schooling, everything, even college. Michael felt tears roll down his cheeks as he nodded. Sophie, these amazing men want to change your whole life. You'll be able to go to the best schools in the world, maybe even study in Paris if that's your dream. The elevator chimed, softly, and Carlos Rodriguez stepped out, carrying his worn toolbox, his work clothes still dusty from fixing electrical systems in the basement. He was a small, wiry man in his late 30s, with calloused hands that told of hard work, and eyes that held the quiet pride of someone who valued his labor despite humble circumstances. Sophie, he called in accented English, looking around the empty hallway with growing worry. Mia, where are you? Papa, Sophie's voice rang out from the boardroom, followed by the quick tapping of her small shoes on the marble floor. She burst through the heavy glass doors and threw herself into her father's arms with the force of a rocket. Papa, you won't believe what happened. I helped save Mr. Harrison's company, and now I'm going to be an ambassador, and they're going to pay for me to go to school, maybe even in France, like Mama always talked about. Carlos held his daughter tightly, his weathered face creased with confusion as he tried to make sense of her rapid words. Slow down, Mija. What are you talking about? Michael approached carefully, knowing he was about to change this man's world. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm Michael Harrison, CEO of this company. Your daughter just did something truly miraculous. Carlos, set Sophie down gently, his face guarded with the caution of someone used to trouble when wealthy people took notice of his family. What kind of miracle, sir? Papa, Sophie jumped in, switching to rapid Spanish. Some Frenchmen came for a big meeting, but their translator got sick. I helped Mr. Harrison talk to them in French, and now they want to give him money to help doctors save people like Mama. Carlos's eyes widened in shock. Hello, Mrs. Dioshi. Are you here to help me practice my French? Carlos had always known his daughter was special. Maria had taught Sophie French from the moment she could talk, insisting their child had a talent for languages that shouldn't be wasted. But this, Jacques and Pierre stepped out of the boardroom, having overheard the conversation. Pierre approached and spoke to Carlos in careful English. Mr. Rodriguez, your daughter is remarkable. She just helped secure the biggest business deal of our careers. She saved my company, Michael added, his voice heavy with gratitude. Without Sophie, I would have lost everything. Carlos looked between these powerful men and his little girl, struggling to grasp how his daughter had become the center of such monumental events. I don't understand. Sophie's just a child. Papa, Sophie said softly, taking his rough hand in her small one. Remember what Mama used to say, that God sometimes picks the smallest people for the biggest tasks. I think today was one of those moments. Carlos knelt to Sophie's level, searching her face. Mija, what did you do? I translated for Mr. Harrison when the Frenchman came. Sophie explained, her voice brimming with excitement. They were going to give him money for a computer program to help doctors, but their translator got sick. So, I helped them talk to each other. And Papa, they want me to travel and tell people about helping sick people, and they want to pay for me to go to the best schools. Carlos felt his world shift. Since Maria's death, he'd worked 3 jobs to survive, lying awake at night worrying about Sophie's future and how he could afford the education her brilliant mind deserved. Mr. Rodriguez, Jacques said gently, we want to offer your daughter opportunities that could change her life forever, but only with your permission. Carlos gazed at his daughter, Maria's precious gift, and saw her mother's intelligence shining in those wise brown eyes. Maria had always said Sophie was meant for something extraordinary, far beyond their humble circumstances. What kind of opportunities? He asked quietly. Michael stepped forward. A full scholarship through university, Mr. Rodriguez. The best schools available. And when she's older, if she chooses, a role as our ambassador to promote life-saving. Medical technology worldwide. Papa, Sophie whispered. This is how I can help other families not lose their mamas. This is how I can make Mama proud. Carlos pulled his daughter close, his voice breaking. Mija, your mama is already proud. She's been proud of you every day since she went to heaven. 3 hours later, the boardroom had turned into a festive space. Rachel had ordered takeout from the city's finest restaurant, and Sophie sat at the head of the grand conference table, looking like a tiny queen surrounded by her loyal court. So, let me get this straight, Carlos said, still grappling with the day's events. You want Sophie to travel to Europe and talk to doctors and investors about Mr. Harrison's technology? Not right away, Jacques clarified patiently. Sophie is still young. We see this happening gradually over years as she grows, maybe starting with small local events, then moving to international ones as she gets comfortable speaking publicly. Sophie bit into her gourmet chicken sandwich with enthusiasm, unfazed by the life-changing decisions around her. Papa, Mrs. Chen always says I'm great at explaining things. Maybe I can explain Mr. Harrison's computer program to people. Michael watched this incredible child who had saved his empire, marveling at her strength and confidence. Sophie, you know being an ambassador means sometimes speaking to big crowds? Sophie nodded eagerly. Like when I recited a French poem at our school's International Day. I was nervous at first, but I thought of Mama watching from heaven. And I felt brave. Pierre smiled warmly. We'd provide top public speaking coaches and make sure Sophie gets proper training before any big events. But Carlos still looked concerned, his fatherly instincts clashing with the incredible opportunities. Senor Harrison, I'm just a maintenance worker. I don't know anything about business or fancy society. How can I guide Sophie through this world? You won't be alone, Michael assured him. We'll provide support, guidance, and resources. And Carlos Ora, never doubt the foundation you and Maria gave Sophie. Her kindness, her wisdom, that didn't come from money or schooling. It came from love. Sophie reached across the table and patted her father's calloused hand. Papa, remember what Mama read to me from the Bible about God choosing ordinary people for extraordinary things. Maybe this is our extraordinary thing. Carlos's heart swelled with pride and fear in equal measure. His little girl was ready to take on the world. But was the world ready for her pure heart? There's something else we need to discuss, Jacques said gently. The media attention this story will bring will be significant. A 7-year-old saving a multi-million-dollar deal. The press will be fascinated. Michael's face grew serious. We'll need to be careful to protect Sophie's privacy and keep her safe. I can handle reporters, Sophie declared confidently. I'll just tell them the truth, that helping people is the most important thing, and sometimes big miracles come in small packages. The adults shared amused glances at her straightforward approach to fame. Sophie, Pierre asked thoughtfully, what would you say to doctors in Europe? How would you explain why this technology matters? Sophie's face grew serious, making her seem far older than 7. I'd tell them every number on their computer screen is someone's mama, papa, or child. When they use Mr. Harrison's program to find sickness early, they're not just saving one person. They're saving everyone who loves that person from having their heart broken like mine was. The room fell quiet. Even these seasoned business leaders were moved by the deep wisdom from such a young heart. Sophie continued softly, I tell them Mama is watching from heaven, and she's proud her little girl is helping other families stay together. Carlos wiped tears from his eyes, realizing this wasn't just about money or opportunities. This was about purpose, Maria's legacy living on through their daughter. Okay, mija, he whispered. Let's change the world. 2 weeks later, Sophie had become a local celebrity. The story of the 7-year-old who saved a multi-million-dollar deal spread like wildfire on social media, with news outlets begging for interviews. But on this morning, as Sophie sat in Michael's office practicing her first ambassador speech with a professional coach, an unexpected visitor arrived. "Mr. Harrison," Rachel's voice came through the intercom, sounding unusually tense. "There's a woman here to see you about Sophie Rodriguez. She says it's urgent." Michael looked up from the speech notes, frowning. "Send her in." The woman who entered was elegantly dressed, perhaps in her 50s, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that mixed determination with nervousness. She carried herself with the poise of someone used to boardrooms and high-stakes deals. "Mr. Harrison, my name is Catherine Dubois," she said, offering a manicured hand. "I believe you know my husband, Jacques." Michael's eyebrows lifted in shock. "Mrs. Dubois, what brings you here?" Catherine's gaze settled on Sophie, who was practicing technical terms with her speech coach. Her expression softened warmly. "I came because of her, because of what my husband told me about this remarkable child." "Is there an issue with the investment?" Michael asked, worry creeping into his tone. "Quite the contrary," Catherine said, taking a seat. "But there's something I must share. Something that changes everything we thought we knew about Sophie Rodriguez." Sophie glanced up from her notes, sensing the weight of the adult conversation. Catherine's eyes glistened as she listened to Sophie's perfect French accent. "Sophie, darling, how much do you know about your mother's family in Quebec?" Sophie tilted her head thoughtfully. "Not much. Mama said her family was from Montreal, but they weren't close. She moved to New York when she was young and didn't talk about them much." Catherine reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph. "Sophie, please look at this picture closely." The photo showed a young woman who looked strikingly like Sophie's mother, standing beside a distinguished older man in front of a grand estate. "That's my sister, Marie Dubois," Catherine said softly. "She left our family 20 years ago after a disagreement with our father about marrying someone he thought was beneath our status." Sophie stared at the photo, her small hands shaking. "That looks like my mama, but her name was Maria Rodriguez, not Marie Dubois. Sometimes people change their names to start fresh," Catherine explained gently. "Sophie, I believe your mother was my niece, which makes you my grandniece." The room grew quiet, except for the soft ticking of the clock. Michael felt the world shift again. "But that would mean," he began. "That Sophie is a Dubois," Catherine finished, "from one of France's wealthiest families. My father, Sophie's great-grandfather, passed away last year, leaving a large inheritance we couldn't claim because we couldn't find Marie or her heirs." Sophie looked between the adults, trying to grasp this life-altering news. "Does this mean I'm rich?" Catherine smiled through tears. "Sophie, darling, it means you're heir to a $50 million estate in France. But more importantly, it means you have family who've been searching for you for years." Carlos, summoned from his work, arrived just in time to hear this bombshell. His face paled as he processed the news. "Señora, are you saying Maria came from a wealthy family?" "The wealthiest," Catherine confirmed. "But Maria chose love over money when she left to marry you and start a new life. She chose happiness over inheritance." Sophie stood slowly, her young mind grappling with how her life had changed again. "Mr. Harrison, does this change our plans? Does it change me being an ambassador?" Michael knelt beside her, his voice steady but kind. "Sophie, this doesn't change who you are. You're still the same brave, kind, brilliant girl who saved my company. Money doesn't change your heart." But Catherine had another surprise. "Actually, Sophie, this inheritance comes with something even more precious than money. Your great-grandfather's estate includes a children's hospital in Lyon, France, that desperately needs modernization and new technology." Sophie's eyes sparkled with realization. "You mean I could help Mr. Harrison's computer program go to that hospital?" I could help doctors there save kids. That's exactly what it means. Catherine said, Sophie, you could bridge two worlds, the technology that saves lives and the resources to make it available to those who need it most. The revelation of Sophie's identity sent shockwaves through everyone. As heir to the Dubois estate, Sophie was no longer just a working-class girl who saved a business deal. She was now a central figure in a web of international business, family legacy, and medical philanthropy. The irony is incredible, Jacques said, sitting in Michael's office with Catherine, Carlos, and Sophie. My business partner and I invested in your company because a little girl convinced us to follow our hearts, only to learn she's my own grandniece. Sophie swung her legs from the oversized chair, still processing her new reality. Papa, does this mean we have to move to France? Carlos looked overwhelmed. Mija, I don't know. This is all so much bigger than I ever imagined. No one has to move anywhere. Catherine assured them gently. But Sophie, you now have choices most children never dream of. You could attend top schools in France, stay in New York, or split time between both. Michael had been quietly reflecting. There's something else to consider. With Sophie's inheritance, including the Children's Hospital in Lyon, we could build the world's first fully integrated AI-assisted pediatric medical center. A model for the world. Sophie's eyes widened with excitement. You mean I could help build a special hospital just for kids, where they use your smart computer to make them better? Exactly, Michael said. You wouldn't just be our ambassador. You'd be our partner. But then, Rachel burst through the door, her face pale with panic. Mr. Harrison, we have a problem. The media has learned about Sophie's connection to the Dubois family. Reporters are downstairs, and someone leaked details about the inheritance. Through the window, they could see news vans gathering below. The simple story of a little girl saving a business deal had become an international sensation involving French nobility, missing heirs, and vast fortunes. Papa, why do all those people want to talk to me? Sophie asked, pressing her face to the window. Because your story is extraordinary, Mija, Carlos said, pulling her close protectively. But extraordinary stories sometimes attract people who don't have good intentions. Catherine's expression grew serious. This changes things. Sophie's safety is now our top priority. Some people might try to take advantage of her, seeing only the money, not the precious child. What do we do? Michael asked, feeling the weight of responsibility for this girl who had become so important to them all. We protect her, Jacques said firmly, and we ensure every decision is made in Sophie's best interests, not for the convenience of adults. Sophie, unaware of the dangers tied to her newfound wealth, stayed focused on helping others. Mr. Harrison, if we build the special hospital, can we make sure kids like me, who don't have mamas anymore, get extra hugs from the nurses? Her innocent question cut through the adults' worries like sunlight through storm clouds. Here was a child who had just learned she was worth $50 million. Yet her first thought was still helping others. Sophie, Catherine said softly, you are exactly what our family has been missing. Your mother chose love over money, and she raised you with the heart of an angel. But Mama always said money is just a tool. Sophie replied thoughtfully. Like Papa's wrenches, it's only good if you use it to fix something broken. Carlos's eyes filled with tears as he heard Maria's wisdom in their daughter's words. What do you want to fix, Mija? Sophie looked at the adults who cared for her, then out at the growing crowd below. I want to fix the sadness kids feel when they're sick and scared. I want to fix the worry mamas and papas have when they don't know if their kids will get better. And I want to make sure doctors have the best tools to help everyone. Michael realized this 7-year-old had just voiced a mission that could guide not only his company, but also transform pediatric medicine globally. Then that's exactly what we'll do, he said, his voice firm with resolve. But outside, the media storm was growing, bringing challenges that would test whether a little girl's pure heart could thrive in a world that often valued wealth over wisdom. 6 months later, the auditorium of the newly renovated Dubois Children's Hospital in Lyon, France, was packed with doctors, investors, researchers, and journalists from around the world. Morning sunlight streamed through preserved, 19th-century stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across faces filled with anticipation. But all eyes were on the small figure standing confidently at the podium. Sophie Rodriguez Dubois, now 8 years old, stood in a simple blue dress her father had carefully ironed that morning. Her dark hair was braided with the same yellow ribbon from that fateful boardroom meeting, and around her neck hung a delicate gold locket with her mother's photograph. "Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs," Sophie began, her voice clear and confident, resonating through the advanced sound system. "My name is Sophie, and I want to share a story about miracles." In the front row, Carlos sat with tears streaming down his weathered face, his calloused hands clasped tightly. Beside him, Michael Harrison tugged nervously at his tie, still in awe that this incredible child had not only saved his company, but had become his key partner in transforming pediatric medicine. Catherine and Jacques Dubois sat nearby, their faces radiant with pride for their remarkable grandniece, who had reunited their broken family while teaching them the true value of wealth. 6 months ago, Sophie continued, switching seamlessly between French and English to reach everyone. "I was just a little girl whose mama had gone to heaven, and whose papa worked hard to care for me. I thought miracles only happened in fairy tales or Bible stories." She paused, her wise brown eyes scanning the audience, captivating doctors, investors, and journalists alike. "But then I learned miracles happen every day when people use their gifts to help others, not just themselves." Sophie gestured to the large screen behind her, displaying real-time data from the hospital's groundbreaking AI system, operational for 3 months. This computer program Mr. Harrison created doesn't just process medical data. It sees every child who enters these doors as someone's precious son or daughter. It works tirelessly to catch diseases early, so families don't have to say goodbye like I did to my mama. A wave of emotion swept through the audience as the screen showed astonishing statistics. A 47% increase in early disease detection, a 33% reduction in treatment time, and most importantly, dozens of young lives already saved. But the real miracle, Sophie said, her voice firm with conviction, isn't the technology. It's what happens when people remember love is stronger than money, kindness is worth more than profit, and sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest hands. She raised her tiny hands, sparking laughter mixed with tears across the auditorium. "When I met the French gentlemen who became my grand-uncle Jacques and Monsieur Laurent, they were thinking like businessmen. But when they remembered their own dreams, everything changed. They didn't just give money. They gave their hearts." Jacques wiped his eyes discreetly, recalling how this child's pure honesty had melted decades of jaded business thinking. Today, this hospital stands for something bigger than advanced technology or big investments. Sophie continued, her voice carrying the weight of someone far older. "It shows what happens when we stop asking, 'How much can I gain?' and start asking, 'How much can I give?'" The audience was silent, hanging on every word from this extraordinary child who spoke with timeless wisdom. "My mama told me heaven isn't just a place you go when you die. It's a place you build by loving others more than yourself." Sophie paused, glancing at the vibrant stained glass windows. "I think Mama sees we've created a little piece of heaven right here." She gestured toward a group of children in wheelchairs near the front, young patients who had insisted on attending her speech. Their faces glowed with hope, living proof of the lives already transformed by the hospital's advanced technology. "To the doctors here today," Sophie said, "when you use this technology to save a child, you're not just treating a patient. You're protecting someone's dreams, their future, their reason to believe in miracles." Her voice softened as she looked at her father. "To Papa, who taught me that honest work and love are the greatest treasures, thank you for showing me that being rich means having enough to share, not to keep." Carlos stood, clapping through his tears, and the auditorium erupted in thunderous Applause. And to everyone here, Sophie continued, raising her voice above the cheers. Remember that miracles aren't rare magic moments. They happen every time someone chooses kindness over competition, sees potential instead of problems, and decides that other people's happiness matters as much as their own. She stepped back from the podium but returned for one final thought. Oh, and one more thing, she said with a playful smile that reminded everyone she was still just 8. If anyone says you're too small to make a big difference, remember I was 7 when I helped change the world. Size doesn't matter when your heart is big enough. As Sophie left the stage to a standing ovation that lasted 10 minutes, Michael realized she hadn't just saved his company or advanced pediatric medicine. She had reminded the world that the greatest force isn't technology or wealth. It's the unshakable belief that every life matters and every dream deserves a chance. Later that evening, as Sophie sat on her father's lap in their hotel room, overlooking Lion's twinkling lights, she asked quietly, "Papa, do you think Mama would be proud of what we did?" Carlos held her close, his heart brimming with love and pride. "Mija, your mama isn't just proud. She's shining with joy in heaven, knowing her little girl took all the love she gave you and spread it to the whole world." Sophie smiled, sleepily, clutching her mother's locket. "Tomorrow, I want to visit the children's ward and read French stories to the kids getting better. Mama always said the best medicine is knowing someone cares." In that moment, Carlos knew that despite the wealth, fame, and opportunities that had transformed their lives, Sophie's heart remained unchanged, pure, generous, and devoted to healing a broken world, one small act of love at a time.